to see everyone here this evening, and those who are listening in on the internet, we're thankful to have you with us as well. We're studying the book of Daniel, and we've almost got through the introduction of Daniel, the book. Remember, chapter 1 basically is what we would call an introduction to the book to give us background of why or how these things came about. And so we're in Daniel chapter 2, and tonight we begin with verse 2. Last week we saw that it was in the second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar that he had a dream. And notice it says dreamed dreams. This wasn't just one dream. Apparently, these were a number of dreams. We don't know if they were exactly all the same dream, like for instance in Pharaoh's case where they were the same dream using different objects, but still it was the same dream. So we don't know exactly. I would assume that it was exactly the same dream, or it was dreams a little bit here added, a little bit more added, and a little bit more added. For instance, the head of gold, and then later a dream that included the arms and chest of silver, etc. We don't know. So verse 2, then the king commanded to call the magicians and the astrologers and the sorcerers and the Chaldeans, for to show the king his dreams. So they came and stood before the king. Now, the question that's logical is, who were these magicians and these astrologers, these wise men, these Chaldeans? And notice the word Chaldeans is capitalized. Isn't that interesting? Were they the same as the others? And the answer is obviously no. They're in a different class, and yet they're lumped in with these people. The word magicians comes from kartom. Some would pronounce it kartome, but Strong tells us this refers to a horoscope or the drawing of magical lines. And those who do the horoscopes, they will try and draw lines between different thoughts to get a so-called concrete thought. It's all a lie, but still that's the way it is. And Baker Carpenter, notice, calls them an engraver. Again, it's the same idea of drawing lines, drawing things together, and then producing some thought. And it's almost always deals with the occult. The magicians of their day is not the same as the magicians of our day. We think about somebody, when we think of a magician, who makes a horse appear when there wasn't any horse there, or disappear, or the lady get cut in half, and all that stuff. All that illusions. And that's how we normally think of the word. You remember Pharaoh did the same thing that Nebuchadnezzar did. He had dreams, and his dreams caused him to call for his magicians, these people who supposedly can read the stars and tell you what's going to happen. And then there are the astrologers, and now we think of these as an astrologer as someone who studies the stars and knows, the movements of the stars in the heavens, etc. We don't think about it in the same light that it is used in the scriptures. This word, ashahaf, it means to be a conjurer, somebody who talks to the dead. That's basically the idea of that word that I am having trouble saying. Conjurers of spirits. Primarily these are people who say that they can talk to the dead and thus relay messages from the dead to the living and act like as a go-between between the living and the dead. And again, giving them information that is vital to let them know what's going to happen in the future, or to let them know if a particular thing they're doing is going to be beneficial to them or harmful or whatever. Again, a bunch of foolishness. And then there's the sorcerers, kashal. And kashal, it means to whisper a spell. These are people who I would liken them the best I can think of to well, I can't even think of the name of them now. Used to find them in Louisiana a lot. Can't think of the name I want, but as people who practice magic spells, they can put a spell on you, and they can cause you all kinds of harm or even death. Voodoo, thank you. I would compare them to what we call people who practice voodoo, the so-called priestesses or priest of the voodoo religion. Baker Carpenter said the exact meaning of this word is rather obscure, but it definitely involves the use of supernatural powers. And again, nothing but foolishness. But here's the Chaldeans. The first thing that we should notice, and I pointed out already, is that the word is capitalized. And it's not, we capitalize certain kinds of words because they mean something to us. For instance, we'll capitalize the word president, and when we do that, we know that we're talking about the President of the United States, usually. But also on letterheads, it will often be used to signify someone who is the head of the company. And it's used somewhat in that way in this passage. These appear to be people who had come from the lower part of the Babylonian Empire, down around the Tigris and Euphrates where they met, the southern area. They were the so-called original people of this empire that made up this empire. They were also considered to be people who were also skilled in these magical arts that of the three classes that we just saw, only superior to them because they either were able to practice two of them or more of them, or they were the heads of these people and so were involved in all of this kind of thing as well. But they would also be considered as being smarter than any of these imported scholars that have been brought in. They would be very jealous of this, and we're going to see this jealousy manifest itself later in the book of Daniel in at least several occasions. They think, oh, we're the top and nobody's better than we are. So when Nebuchadnezzar said that Daniel and his friends were 10 times better, what do you think's going to happen from that? And apparently he said it in front of all of his wise men. What do you think's going to come from that? In these over-enthusiastic, prideful Chaldeans who think they're better than everybody else. They were considered to be the intelligentsia of their time. They're intelligent. It's interesting to me that most of the problems that we see coming around in our country and other countries are always based around two particular groups. Those who are considered to be the intellectuals and those who teach in our universities and colleges. Now, that's not the case with all. But generally speaking, look at how many problems come from those two classes of people, and you're going to see problems coming in the book of Daniel because of the same class of people. Kaufman saw them as a class of ancient astrologers who were composed of all of these groups and made up all of them. Haley thought that they were part of the Babylonian priesthood, and also when you look at the historian Herodotus, the Greek historian Herodotus, he thought that these were the priests of Bel that offered their advice. So that you can see there's a lot of ambiguity and uncertainty about exactly who they were. But whoever they were, they are considered a special class. Now, before we get into start verse 3 of this text, I'd like to offer just a few thoughts. Number one, when those who attempt to teach or to write commentaries or bulletin articles or chapters in lectureship books and attempt to do so in an honest fashion, it needs to be remembered always that this comes from honest efforts to understand the history, the truth of a matter. And yet, those of us who are involved in that kind of thing, we're human and we can make mistakes. And sometimes we don't have all the information, just like Daniel is not going to have all of the information. He's going to be left wondering, what does this mean? And so I'd like for those who are listening in our viewing audience and those in our classroom to keep that in mind. I'm going to be offering what my studies have revealed to me to the very best of my ability. I pray that I'm doing it with an honest heart. That's one of the first things that I ask God about every time I sit down to study, or almost every time. Sometimes I forget, like all human beings do. But I ask God for the wisdom to understand the things that I'm studying and viewing and thinking about. Hopefully that's the case, and hopefully I'm giving you something that can help you to better understand the Scriptures. Hopefully I understand them correctly. But I think that's important to mention once in a while at least. I know William and Ron both feel a lot the same way. We're just simply trying to give information that is accurate and can help every one of us to grow. Let's look at verses 3 and 4 now. And things are going to change. Chapter 1 through verse 2 of Daniel is an introduction. It is written in the Hebrew language. But from this point on until the end of chapter 7, it's going to be written in the Syriac, or what we call the Aramaic language. And I think there's some reasons for that, but let's get into that just a little bit later. Then spake the Chaldeans, I didn't read the verses, did I? And the king said unto them, I have dreamed a dream, and my spirit was troubled to know the dream. Then spake the Chaldeans to the king in Syriac, O king, live forever. Tell thy servants the dream, and we will show the interpretation. Why is it specified that they spoke in the Syriac, that is, the Aramaic language? Jenny asked me on the way home last week, she said, what do you think the reason is for speaking in the Hebrew and then speaking in the Aramaic? I have some thoughts on that, but they're just my thoughts. Aramaic, first of all, was believed to be the Syriac. The Aramaic was thought to be the language of the court of that time. And when you went before the king, you're going to speak in the language that he wants spoken. That's just simple thinking. Several things are to be noted about the Aramaic, though. From this point, again, until the end of chapter 7, it's Aramaic. And it's interesting because when the Jews came back from Babylonian captivity, what is now their primary language? Aramaic. They have lived in Babylon for so long that their children were raised speaking Aramaic. Very few of the people who were taken into captivity, in these captivities, had originally been in the land of Israel speaking Hebrew. And the same thing happened in Egypt years before, when another version of the Bible was being spoken, Greek. That's what we call the Septuagint version. And by the way, what version did Jesus and the apostles quote out of? It wasn't the Greek. The Hebrew, the original Hebrew. It was the Septuagint. They didn't quote from the original Hebrew. They quoted from the Septuagint, proven over and over and over again. So we have a group of people that have been in captivity for so long that their children have been raised up, and it's mostly going to be their children who will end up going back, along with some who were taken into captivity originally. And what are they going to be speaking? Basically, Aramaic. Before this point, the text is in Hebrew. Now it's going to be replaced by Aramaic. And at the end of chapter 7, beginning with chapter 8, it's going to go back to Hebrew. That brings some thoughts too. Why? Well, let's ask a question. Did Daniel know that when they went back to the promised land that their primary language is now going to be Aramaic? You see, God would have had to have revealed that to him, wouldn't he? But the next question is, does God always, or did God always reveal to his prophets everything that was going to take place in the future, or everything that the people needed to know at that moment? Or did he sometimes do it in pieces? And we know that that's the case. Here a little, there a little. Little bit at a time, as they were able to handle it. It is my belief that the reason Daniel spoke in the Aramaic beginning at this point is for two reasons. It's the language of the court, and they're going to be dealing with the king about official things that were going to take place in the future, and that he did not know at this point that they weren't going to still be speaking primarily the Hebrew. They're going to be speaking primarily the Aramaic. And I believe that's the answer to Jenny's question. After the Hebrews returned, they spoke the Aramaic. Nebuchadnezzar says, I have dreamed a dream. Oh, wait a minute. Didn't we notice that the plural was used before of dreams? What difference does it make? I've dreamed a dream, and my spirit is troubled. Interestingly, this is the word that really signifies agitated. It's more than just the idea of being troubled. We can be troubled about something without really being agitated about it. So what it's showing us is that this thing started eating at Nebuchadnezzar. It started really weighing on him. And this has got to mean, I've got to know what this means. And when he was stymied in understanding, in part because he couldn't remember what the dream was, he starts getting more agitated. You ever had that happen to you? I think most of us have in some way or some time about something. Why was he so desperate? Because he seemed to have understood. He seemed to have recognized that this wasn't an ordinary dream. This is something more than just a dream about some nonsense that's going to happen, like the dreams you and I many times have. And you know, we have dreams, a lot of different kinds of dreams, don't we? Some of our dreams are very frightening. And even though they may not wake us up at the moment that we have that dream, when we do wake up, we're troubled about that, aren't we? And sometimes our dreams are so frightening that they wake us up in the middle of the night yelling or screaming and sweating profusely because it was so horrible. Sometimes they're just nonsense. You know, dreaming that you were that you had an ice cream cone for a nose. It's just silly. Doesn't mean anything. In fact, our dreams probably don't mean too much, except maybe our subconscious bothering us about something or something we had been thinking about. I know that some would find this hard to believe, but I have sometimes dreamed things, woken up and go running into my office and write it down because it was something I had been studying, and somehow I was thinking about it in my sleep. And so I wanted to write it down. I know a number of preachers have told me that they keep a notebook beside their bed because their semi-dreams or semi-consciousness of dreams and dreams, they'll be thinking about something that they'd been studying that day, and all of a sudden a thought comes to them and they wake up and they write it down. I don't bother Jenny that way. I just go and write it down otherwise, or wait till the morning. But he recognized there's something special about this dream. There's something I need to know, and somebody's revealing it to me. That had to be going through his mind to some extent. He also seemed to realize that this dream was about his future, or the future of his nation, his country, his kingdom. He wants to know, what's it about? Notice that the logical question is, since these men, these magicians, these astrologers, seem to say that they can understand dreams and visions, a logical question is going to be asked. Well, can't they then tell me what the dream is? That's a logical question. And it's an accurate question. Tell thy servants the dream, and we'll show you the interpretation. Oh, come on, tell me one dream that you've had, and let's see if I can't figure out some possible explanation for it. Or all of us in the room do that. Why, we know that that's a possibility. And will what we say be worth anything? Probably not. So they say, tell us what the dream is, and we'll tell you what it means. They can't do it. Maybe they thought that You know, if he will just forget about this, he'll forget about it completely. And we'll be off the hook because we can't do what he wants us to do. We can't tell him what his dream was. Nobody can do that. They are right in their assertion to him. They couldn't tell him what his dream was. No human being could do that. If I had a dream, and I have dreams almost every night. Some of them aren't too good. Some of them are funny. Some of them are just silly. But if I came in here and I tell you, tell me what I dreamed tonight, you know that that's an impossibility. You can't do that. The only way you can know what I dreamed is if I tell you what I dreamed. And he knows that. He understands that.